Today I've brought my daughter Rachel Renne with me. She's the illustrator for this book, and we thought we'd talk a little bit about putting a book together. Rachel, what made you think you could illustrate a book?
Well, when I was in my first few years of elementary school, we were always doing projects where we had to illustrate something. Maybe we already had the text, but we were always drawing pictures. And I just happened to have the right kind of teachers that told me the right kinds of things like, wow, I really like how you put fingers on all of your people. Not many of the other students do that. So they always made sure to tell me something that they liked about my pictures, and so that gave me enough confidence. Maybe I drew a little bit on my own after that, but it wasn't until I was in 11th grade that I actually took a real art class. And in 11th grade, I had very good teachers again, and they gave me the right kind of projects that brought out talent or ability, and so I felt confident enough to take another art class the next year that was a little bit more advanced. And then after that, well, it was you who told me you had this project to write a book about the Charlotte Harbor Watershed. And so I was really excited about your project, so when you told me about it, I said, well, if you're looking for an illustrator, I would be thrilled to do it. So that's pretty much the short story of how that happened. And what about you? How did you become a writer?
I think I was in the 3rd grade, and our teacher, another good teacher like the ones you had, assigned us a poem and to read. The poem was written from the poet speaking to a butterfly that had landed on his shoe. I believe the poem is called White Butterflies by D.H. Lawrence. And our teacher asked us to imagine that we were that butterfly on the poet's shoe, talking back to the poet. So I really loved that idea, to get out of myself and to put my imagination into something else. When I got finished with my composition, and it wasn't a poem, it was a little story, the teacher put it up on the bulletin board, and everybody read it. So not only did I love the part where I got to write and imagine things, but I liked sharing that point of view with others. So it was about that time when I said, oh, I think I would like to be a writer. I've done lots of other things in my life, teaching and editing and storytelling, but the thing I like the best is to write. And this book is really fun because I got to imagine that I was all of these creatures, and all of the people in the book. I got to imagine myself as everything in the book, so that was fun for me. Now, when you were drawing these pictures, how did you figure out what to draw?
Well, that's sort of an interesting question, because when you first gave me the text, when I first got the text, it was pretty long, much longer than it is in this book. And so part of my goal was, in the beginning, to look at your text and figure out what I could draw to take out words, because as we always say, the cliche, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so we might as well take advantage of that. So my job was to reduce the number of words by making a picture. And so I read through each passage, and a lot of things can happen in each passage, so I had to choose an event that interested me, or maybe could put an animal in a position that would be an interesting thing to draw. And after that, I tried drawing it, and if it worked, I kept going. Apart from that, since the book is the focus on the animals, I also kept the people sort of to the side. So there's a lot of pictures in this book where you'll see just a little part of a person, and that's because I'm trying to focus on the animals. What you were doing when you were writing it is you were trying to get dialogue in there, but you didn't want your animals to speak, it seemed like, and so you wanted to make them more realistic. And so in order to get the dialogue in there, you put the people, but since the book is about the animals, I brought the focus back to the animals and putting the animals in the pictures.
I really like that picture at 4 Mile Cove Ecological Preserve. Why don't you get that one up and we'll look at it. I think that one really, that's in, yeah, there it is. I think that's the one that really shows from the animal's point of view. Here's Nick, the yellow-crowned night-heron. And what I like to ask the children is, where are the people in this picture? All you can see are just a little bit of the wheels of the stroller.
Right.
No feet, no nothing. Oh, and the crumbs from the little child in the stroller
Right.
who's eating and they're falling down, but that's very important to the story that they're in there.
Absolutely. And so what I usually do is I started with the animal that was the focus animal for the picture or for the chapter. And so I started with that animal and then I drew the rest of the picture around. So that's pretty much what I did here. I drew the bird, I drew the crab, I drew the crumbs, and then I said, oh wait, there's people in this picture talking, and the crumb comes from somewhere, or it comes from the child, so I put the stroller in on top. And so that way the focus really was the animal.
Now, what medium did you use to do these drawings?
Actually, it's all done in colored pencil. There's a little bit of black pen in there for the little things to give the details, but otherwise it's just colored pencil.
And why did you choose colored pencil?
Well, I chose colored pencil because it's a medium I'm really comfortable with. It's something I'd worked a lot with sort of leisurely for fun, and it's also something that I see a lot of children with. And so if a child can see that I'm doing this, well, anyone can do this. It's just colored pencil. It's nothing special.
And now, I originally got the idea for these stories from an author named and he wrote a story called Men of the Mississippi. Now, you remember me reading that story to you when you were a child.
One of my favorites. First of all, the text was very informative, and it was a story of a turtle that was traveling down the Mississippi River. And second of all, the illustrations were magnificent. They were just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And so, like most children, I was really taken by the pictures, and so.
Well, so I tried to model the book after that in some ways. I like to say I owe him an intellectual debt. My story is not at all like his story and what happens in his story, but that format of following a creature through the watershed, I certainly took from his books. And he also had that idea of taking the science in the book and putting it aside a little bit, putting it in a little box off to the side, something we might want to call a sidebar or something like that.
Right.
So that was important too, because I felt not only did we not want to portray these animals as if they were talking characters, we wanted to show them as real creatures. I also didn't want to clutter up the storytelling with a lot of scientific facts. That also allowed a lot of scientific educators to be able to come and give their information and knowledge and expertise to the book from all the different school systems in the Charlotte Harbor Watershed.
Right. That's very good. And also, I'm a scientist myself. I'm an entomologist, and so within this book, aside from the sidebars, you can find something else very interesting. It's a bunch of little tiny insects are all over this book. That's the thing I'm most interested in, and so in almost every picture you can find an insect. And on the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program website, you can find a list of those insects.
Now, how did you decide what insect to draw for each scene?
Sometimes it was because I was in the mood to draw a certain insect, and it probably would be found in that area, and sometimes it was more based on what actual habitat I was seeing, and then I needed something to be in a certain area. I didn't have anything yet, and sure, I could put an insect there.
Do you have an example that you could show us from the book?
I do have an example. A good example is this picture, the first picture that anyone ever sees, and there's actually a cicada on the edge of the pine tree. So in this picture I put in, there's actually two insects, but I'll focus on the cicada. I put him in because I felt like this picture needed a little bit more, and that seemed like a good place. And cicadas are one of my favorite insects.
Now, why do you like cicadas so much?
I love cicadas because they have a very long life cycle. Most people think of insects as dying very quickly, but in fact the cicada can live underground for something like 13 years. It depends on the species. And from time to time, there's a lot of them that hatch out at the exact same time, and so you get just flooded with them. They're all over the place. Aside from that, they sing beautifully in the summertime when it's hot.
Okay, now do you think you have some pictures that you like more than others, some that you like more than others in this book?
Yes, I can answer yes to that. One example would be, it's in the otter chapter, and it's this little character here. This is a picture of the otter. He's eating a crayfish. She's eating a crayfish, Lou. And she's just stolen all the crayfish out of this bucket. There were some folks fishing on the bridge, and she stole all the crayfish out of their bucket, so they had to stop fishing. So So I like drawing that picture because I feel like it's a very adorable picture.
It is adorable. That is an adorable picture of an otter. And I noticed that there's a bug in that picture.
Yes, there is a bug in this picture. That is a common housefly, in fact, and I put him there because it's likely that we'd find a fly around a fishing pier. So, and I wanted to put an insect in that picture, so he's there.
Very good. How about another one? Do you have another favorite one?
Sure. I also really like, it's in the alligator chapter, I really like the picture where the alligator is catching the grasshopper. That's probably because it's the alligator and the grasshopper together. And this grasshopper is a little bit more elegantly colored than normally you would see, but it's more or less a lubber grasshopper.
When we were working with the children, we actually had one and managed to catch one and hold on to one and show it around. So that was fun too.
Oh, that's good.
And it was very brightly colored. I think the colors are pretty true to your drawing.
Well, for the sake of science, I think I've exaggerated a little. But
well, let's talk about the process of working together. Now, the first thing I did was write the story, and then I gave it to you to read. And then you drew the pictures, and then I got the story back and rewrote it.
Exactly. So why did you rewrite it when you got it back with my pictures?
Well, it's that what you were talking about before, where a picture is worth 1,000 words. Your pictures told parts of the stories, and there were too many words. They were covering up your beautiful pictures. Why don't you show that picture from the first part of Chapter 2 about the alligator? Now, in this picture, you'll see that this much is the text, my story, and then this part over here is the sidebar or the science. But a lot of things happened in this story that got cut out of it that you put in the picture. Now, how about giving an example of that?
A good example of that would be way up here in the corner, there's a raccoon. And the reason there's a raccoon is he was checking out the nest in the first picture, in the first version of the book. But eventually he got cut out, but he's still there. This is actually the very first picture I ever drew, and so it's exceptionally detailed. And eventually it dawned on me that I couldn't put detail every single place in the picture because we needed some space for words. So this was the first picture, and that would be why it's absolutely chock full of detail.
And all these pictures are on the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary website without the words to interfere in any way with them. So if you're interested in looking at the full, beautiful pages that Rachel drew, you can go to the website and look at them. And Rachel, we were also talking before about usually an artist works in a larger size, and then the images are reduced for the book. Now, you didn't work that way.
That's right. It's very often done that way. In fact, there are 2 pictures in this book that have been reduced, and that would be here. Both these pictures are reduced. Yes, you're right. That's very often how illustrators work. And I had never illustrated before. I wasn't really aware of how it was done, but I would definitely do it that way the next time. I feel like the resolution comes through a lot better if it's just a small bit reduced. It doesn't have to be a lot. But this was a learning process for me. I'd never illustrated anything like a book before. I'd only drawn for myself, more or less. And
so would you do things differently?
I would. Maybe one of the biggest changes I would make is I'd be a lot more involved in the writing process. I loved drawing from your words. That was a huge treat. But usually my favorite children's books are the ones that are illustrated by the author, because then you sort of have an idea of what you're writing and what you're going to draw, or maybe you draw first and then write. I don't know. So it's more of a whole thing. And I would probably try to design it as well. But I love this product. I feel like we really created something beautiful and meaningful and helpful for children for learning. But I learned a lot from it. And what about you? Would you do anything different the next time?
I think I would try, yes, I think I would. I think I would try to write less descriptively, to allow the illustrator to have more leeway with creating the world for the animals to live in, to supply the story, as I would if I were in front of a group doing a storytelling session.
Sure.
I think that would work well. I also think we did a great job, and that this is a really wonderful book, and I'm happy that we're, through the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program, we're able to share it with so many students. And it was my belief all along that it was very, very important for us to get this message, this information to the children, because the future of the entire watershed is in their hands. So they ought to have the information to be able to act responsibly about it.
Right. You know, that was the reason that I said I wanted to illustrate this. I was so excited to be able to share what I know and what I loved, and pictures of what I see every day and adore as an entomologist, as a naturalist, as someone who likes to be outside. I wanted to share that with the children of this region. And so that was a big part of why I suggested to be the illustrator.
It was interesting. I think I have traveled to almost, not every place, but almost every place that's in this book. How about you?
Me, no. I have not traveled to almost every place, but I have spent an enormous part of my time, my life outside. I grew up in the woods, and I was outside almost every minute that I wasn't at school or wasn't nighttime. And just this past winter, I walked the Florida Trail, and so I just spent 2.5 months outdoors every day in Florida, seeing my favorite things and sometimes not my favorite things. Sometimes I was seeing nothing but landfills and dikes and canals and sugarcane fields, and that wasn't, I learned a lot about Florida, but I saw a lot of beautiful Florida too.
Terrific. Well, is there something you wish I would have asked you?
Something I wish you would have asked me. Maybe I'd like to tell you a little bit about my thoughts on what's really special about a picture book for children.
Okay.
It's a combination of words and artwork, and that's really a unique thing. We have comic books, but it's not really the same thing. This is a medium that's really, really unique. And the reason it's unique is, in fact, there are two components, the pictures and the words, and each one can be used to create a whole story. So you have a little bit coming from one side, a little coming from the other, and it creates a story. For example, you could put in the illustration something that's never ever mentioned in the text. And a lot of times the insects I put in are like that. A good example in well-known children's books is Mercer Mayer's little critter books. He often has a little grasshopper on every page. You see him doing something, but he's never mentioned in the text. It's just a little side story. And so it's really a unique medium. You can do lots of things with it.
Author of the Adventures in the Charlotte Harbor Watershed, and Rachel Renne, my daughter and the wonderful illustrator of this book.
Thank you all, and I hope you all enjoy the book. I illustrated it for you.
For free classroom materials, please visit our website at www.chnep.org.